All right, I guess we'll call meeting to order. If you guys want to review the minutes, we've got a quorum.
I was absent, so I'm going to be voting on it.
Should we review the minutes? Yeah. I just need a minute. Yeah.
Did you call the meeting to order?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I whispered it.
Okay.
How you doing? Good.
That's good. It doesn't link. Just making sure it doesn't. Yeah, you have to communicate. Yeah.
Are we still going over?
Nobody knows that I'm the one. Who's going to open the bed? I try to keep the crowds down.
That's the Halloween right there.
Oh. Tree shortage.
All right, I make a motion to accept the September minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, minutes accepted from September. Okay, so we're gonna start with Watson Woods. I noticed there was a change with the driveways. Tom, you wanna just tell us about that?
Sure. Yep. Going through the plan, what we did was, back up a little bit. What we did was we took these two lots that are on Hussey Road and combined those to have the same driveway there. The original plan was to take lot 6 and come out that way. What we did was we combined it with lot 5, so it came out this way. So what we have is 4 driveways, same number we had before, and there are 2 on each one. That avoids the discussion about whether it's a private way or not with serving 3 or more lots. So we felt that that was a reasonable choice. No more driveways than we had before. The other item that we did was we took this section here that we had talked about on the lot to be retained by Nate and made this as a set aside in open space so that you pick up another 14 acres of open space on the property. That went with this 8 acres in here, so that was all contiguous. We think it's in the right place. This is where the wetland and the stream come down through, so we think we're setting aside the correct place on the property. And then that would leave this section over here for future development. Obviously, anything that happens on it comes back to the board if it's more than 1 lot. If it gets sold as an estate lot, then they would be able to get one building and that would have to be in this area here. So we think that's pretty much what we talked about for the board and moved it forward. I think the other thing that happened was you received a draft of findings of fact from Rob.
All right, any questions?
Yeah, I have a few here. I guess the first question is, now that 5 and 6 are sharing the lot, does that put that driveway back into that kind of area that we were already kind of concerned about as far as site distance because of the grade?
No, it moves it to lot 5 where we had it before, so we moved it uphill from there. So that was the one that met the standards and was okay. That required us to put an easement on lot 5 for the access driveway.
Okay. My second question is, did we get confirmation and or follow-up from CES regarding the should meet site
Yes,
distance?
yes.
Okay.
A little more definitive with this language, and I think there is, what's it say, the owners association is responsible for maintaining the vegetation along there, so that's.
Thanks, I didn't see that, the conversation or the follow-up.
Yes, it was, I saw it in the email.
Okay. And then just on the map, and maybe it's just a verbiage, I guess, but Area B, open space for future development. This area is to remain undeveloped. Contradictory, and I'm not sure if maybe that's just how it normally would read, but it just seems like this area is for future development, but it's not being developed, so.
Well,
that's.
In my small world.
It could be just normal speak for you guys.
Yeah, in my small world, it would still be available for density calculations, if you were going to do density calculations on the remaining land, and so therefore it would be part of the development, but it would be open space.
Okay,
which
so
is
no buildings, no cutting,
correct.
No, nothing further, future, okay. And then I just wanted to clarify, because it stood out to me a little bit when I was watching the YouTube video. On page 40 here in the land use ordinance, it says the maximum number of units served by a common driveway is 4. So I don't know if that kind of helps clarify and give us a little. But that does go to say that it is also ambiguous when we have another one that says driveways are 2 or less. Right. So I think this is another point that we've kind of uncovered, that just there are inconsistencies of verbiage throughout the entire ordinances. Unfortunately, this is what we have. I would, where the other one says 2 or less, I'm also seeing this as common driveway is 4, and that's a pretty definitive maximum number. So that's what I would.
Fortunately, they've modified it so we don't even have to entertain.
Just wanted to make sure that we
for future. Any other questions? Andy, any questions?
Well, we're gonna have a discussion as well as questions?
Sure, let's discuss it.
Just more discussion. Okay, so, number 8, regarding the retained land.
So you want the finding of facts?
Yeah.
Yep.
If the applicant intends to build more than one house or subdivide that parcel further in the next 5 years, he must seek planning board approval. That's already,
Right.
that's already built into the ordinance.
Yeah,
You know, what we had talked about was 10 years.
correct.
And also, I'm just wanting, that's a little too open for me. You know, I'm happy that they're giving us this, whatever this acreage is here, but actually they're giving us a wetland, which for the most part they can't work on anyway. So that's good. That's, you know, it's nice. We got 22 acres out of 55. I'd just like to see this a little bit more defined in terms of, this leaves his intent wide open,
Right.
you know.
So one of the things I thought is, I mean, they speak about an estate house, and you know, as far as conditions go, I would recommend if it were more than an estate house, then we would have to address the condition of Hussey Road, which was a problem in the beginning with the density. So I would like to say one of the conditions would say, if you did do more than an estate house, then the road would have to be brought up to standards, which would mean it would have to be widened on the paved end and paved on the dirt end to bring it up to standard for the town. So that's what I would say as far as the condition goes. I don't know if that would satisfy what.
It does, I mean, actually it goes, it's for the contrary to what, you know, I thought our intent was to preserve Hussey Road as a rural byway or whatever it is in the comprehensive plan.
Right.
And to make that open, just sort of, go ahead, you know, just do this, it becomes a cost, you know, analysis situation, not a preservation situation.
So what do you suggest?
I'm not sure, I think it's something we gotta kick around, I don't wanna be the only one addressing it.
Right.
But my feeling is that, you know, based on what he's done on this, on the 160 side, it's conceivable you could put about 5 or 6 more houses in this block.
Right.
But that's not probably true, because of the way it's laid out.
Right,
Yeah.
and the grade.
Maybe 2
It's a
or
grade.
3. But again, I think what would, for me, I mean, what are you suggesting, that we say it has to be an estate house? I mean, if we leave it open and say, if you do more than an estate house, you're responsible for the road, that gives them the option, but it also is a deterrent. I mean, that's a big expense to bring that road up to the standard for, you know, what the town requires.
There's another point to think about, Rick. You live on Hussey Road,
Indeed.
and you might have to recuse yourself from any decisions on that.
Okay, so I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming because we're about to come to an end here. So I'll put this out to the development team. I live on Hussey Road. Would you prefer I recuse myself from this? I'll leave it up to you. Do you want me to recuse myself?
No, I didn't know you lived on Hussey Road.
Right, I do. I don't own property, but I do live on Hussey Road. If you would like, I could recuse myself from this. Or is there anybody else who thinks I should recuse myself?
No, I think you've been remarkably objective.
I've tried to be fair in this. I've tried to, I mean, this was about ordinances. I think we've come to that point. I knew this would be a problem with some folks because we're coming to an end here. So, I don't know, what else do you think?
Well, the end that I would like to see is not the standard 5-year wait. We need to extend it. That's what I would like to see, and Andy mentioned that as well.
Right, we've discussed 10. We've discussed 10 on the, as a matter of fact, 10 years was a condition on the preliminary approval. So it's already been applied as a condition 10 years to the preliminary approval.
I'm not, you know, I would like to see this proceed with, if they are, you know, give us some genuine guarantees on Area A. The history of this is such that things are shifted around a lot. I don't want to dwell on that. I think these professionals working with us here have been more than fair, forthcoming on that. However, you know, I kind of want this nailed down so we're not just getting a pig in a poke. It's kind of slippery pig too. So that's, I wanna see it go forward and done, you know, but I also wanna make sure we get this very clear, what's gonna happen with this. It's a little too open for me.
Right, so I'm not sure.
You
what
want verbiage? I don't
Yeah,
know.
right, I mean, otherwise, I don't really.
I
know
wanna
what
throw
we're
it
doing.
open for other people, because I don't wanna be the one.
Anything from, either of you guys, Brendan, Nate?
I mean, it's 5 in the ordinance, 10 has been thrown out there, so I think it's up to us to just decide, are we gonna put the condition of 10 or?
Well, I think we have with 10, we actually did vote on that with the preliminary, so we probably should stick to that.
So we just, that changes to 10.
But also, in addition to that, I would suggest that we do say that if there is more than an estate house, then, you know, the road would have to be addressed.
And if that, and more than a estate, so you're saying if
If
it's
there's
just
multiple
one
houses,
yes,
you know, that was part of the
and
problem.
that's a subdivision at that point anyway, right?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
they have to
right.
come back.
Yep, and if they do an estate house, they don't have to come back to the planning board at all.
But and if they come back, when it's not an estate house, if they come back in a subdivision at that time, the Hussey Road situation can be
Yes, that would be part of doing another subdivision, they would have to bring the road up to speed.
How do you feel about that idea? Stick with 10 and, or should we as a group work on the wording of it, and then send it to everybody involved?
Well, I think it's 10 anyway, you know, since it's in the preliminary, which is what my memory was, and I wasn't sure. I think that specifying they have to work on the road, I'm questioning whether that's really even, you know, enforceable.
I don't know if we need to specify that now.
Yeah, really.
But,
You can put it, I mean, is there a note to carry on, you know, as far as like,
I'm not following you,
so again, like 10 years, who's to say that any of us are so,
most likely none of us will be, so.
you know, 10 years comes around, he comes back for subdivision.
That's why I say we
all
would
that
put,
historical, you know, discussion of like, you know, Hussey Road being widened,
yeah.
if this happens, but again, we're talking if, this, then, and that.
Right.
So again, I don't know if it's necessarily something we need to like spend too much time on, but, you know, add this of 10 years, and then if a subdivision is proposed after 10 years, widening Hussey Road needs to be investigated.
Yeah, something to that degree, it would need to be addressed as far as bringing it up to the standards for the town, because it's not there.
It's not saying it has to be, but it's saying and then it kind of lives with the land and the
Right.
space, so it's saying, you know, after this, you know, if it comes back for a subdivision, let's look at Hussey Road, has it been widened since then? Who knows, I mean, in 10 years, could be widened by then, but for other reasons.
Right, so I think as long as we address that, I don't know if that satisfies what you're.
I like the 10-year thing. I think that, you know, the note going forward, I think we can make a strong recommendation. I think we also, when we write our final thing, we need to run it by
Okay, well,
I don't have too much, deviation from what they did,
right.
but still, yeah. I think that we should put in a strong recommendation that only one house be built on that lot. It's a recommendation, it's not a requirement.
Okay,
But the requirement would be that it's more than one.
It has to come,
That's a 10-year moratorium.
there's a 10-year.
So like, that's, yeah, we should be clear about that. Because
Right.
that, you know, it's essentially making that a requirement that it's only one house.
Correct.
For 10 years.
So one house, if anything, above one house, 10 years.
So 10-year moratorium
it's-
beyond one house.
Yeah, if after 10 years, subdivision has occurred, Hussey Road would need to be looked at as far as widening.
we'll just say it's, brought up to standard, you know, like we're not even gonna specify, brought up to standard.
Yeah, but
What's standard?
There's specific, 16 feet wide, I mean, it's only like 14 and a half feet wide at certain
It
points.
says 3 Rod Road.
Yeah, 16 is the standard, it's maybe 14 and a half in some.
So current standard?
Yeah, whatever.
well, we're leaving it a little nebulous. We should be real specific.
But it,
The wait, this is another piece onto this. I'm not trying to negate what you're saying. we should be specific that the cost for the change in Hussey Road has to be carried by any developer. That should be written right in there, right into that, because we might not be here in 10 years.
Right. And that's the intent, but you're right, the language.
The language has to be in there.
I agree.
Whoever develops,
I'm
They will have to-
okay with all that.
develop Hussey Road.
All right, the other thing, some folks want to address before we discuss it, the buffer. The intent was to replant the buffer as each house sells. Some folks said that they want to see the buffer replanted all at once. What's the discussion with the board there?
I mean, it seems like they've addressed this. The buffer on each lot must be planted in accordance with the approved plan before building permits will be issued.
Right.
Is
That doesn't mean all at once. That means they could get somebody to buy the lot, put the buffer in them, and then, you know, they could do it as the lots are sold.
Yeah, that's
sell
the
without
intent.
sell without the permit.
No, the intent is to put the buffer in as each house is built, instead of putting the buffer up all at once along
Well, each
160.
lot is sold.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know,
Right.
sold, built.
Because you need a building permit before you can start building,
Right.
right? So you need to, they need to plan like as it's sold.
Either way, I think it's one at a time.
But if it doesn't sell for, just hypothetically,
Right.
10 years.
And that's what some of the concerns brought up were, is that should the buffer be done all at once, or should it be done piecemeal? I don't,
Take it down all at once.
It sure was. Yeah.
I mean, I think, kind of the intent for this, was to address that, and so, if that is the intent, then I think, we should say that it needs to be planted, just once the plan is approved, or once first availability after plan is approved, regardless of what lots is sold.
so are you saying all at once, or?
Yeah, I think take it down on one plan.
All right, so what about you?
I'm tending to err towards, as the lot is, as a building permit issue. Myself, but, I mean, I can see the argument either way, so,
Guys,
I mean, the
wanna
whole
speak
idea
to
is that it's a buffer slash screening,
Right.
if there's nothing to screen or buffer against, then it's,
Right.
it's not, there's nothing to buffer against.
Right, I think the concern was uniformity and growth, which, I don't know.
Good
Do you
idea.
guys want to speak to it?
Yeah, we're looking obviously at the way it's written is before the building permit is issued, because we think that it can be checked by the code enforcement officer. Obviously, there's a cost with this, and it can be spread out over a longer period of time, which makes it a little easier for the developer to do that and make it work from there. Obviously, approving it tonight, they aren't gonna get planted until next spring anyway, and we may have sales between now and then, and that will be part of the condition of the sales, will be supplying that piece of it.
I think it's too hard to track it over a long period of time. I think we deal with a buffer situation, it's all uniform growth, and we have to track this over years. We're not, the whole board may be gone.
Well,
In
we're not
3
gonna
years.
be-
Well, it would be the code.
Yeah, the code enforcement officer,
Right.
We're not enforcing it.
Right.
So, so what have we got? 2, 1. So, I don't know, one of the conditions, seems to be leaning toward replanting the buffer all at once. I don't know I understand you don't want to do that. It might be, you know how that's been one of the biggest things people have been complaining about from the beginning, the cutting of the buffer when you knew it was a subdivision. So maybe that's maybe that's where we have to settle, replant the buffer all at once. Anybody else got anything to say about it? No? Not really. All right, so, and what about any other conditions? Anybody else have another condition that you would like to discuss? No? Are there any concerns from any butters? Anybody here? Mr. Anderson, you're in a butter. Any concerns? Comments?
No, I'm not, I'm farther down the road than.
Right. All right, so, oh, Ms. Lane?
I just have a question about the map, and I think this is the new one dated 9/23/19. It came in after last month's meeting. It says right on it, and I know in the past they've debated whether whether it matters or not, but if you look at the bottom of the map here, it says, exceptions, no detailed survey report. I believe the board had said this map was gonna go to their independent review and it didn't. If you look at that exceptions and you look down below, it says, this number 2, this survey conforms with the current standards adopted by the Maine Board of Licensure and for professionals land surveyors, exceptions noted above. So it conforms to the standard except for number 1, which is there's no detailed survey report. And then it also says number 3 at the bottom, not valid or true copy of original unless signed and embossed by surveyor. If you look at the signature line, it's blank. So to me, I would not put my signature on this if I was a planning board member. And I think that you've also asked that they update the abutter list, and Mr. Hennessy has not been around unless they changed it on this one. Where is it? Oh, over here. Daniel and Doreen Hennessy moved, what, a year and a half ago? I mean, you live on the road, you know they've been long gone. You've asked them to fix the abutter list, and I don't know how many others, but there were at least 4 people that have moved out of town since this thing happened. Hasn't there been?
Well, I did request that they send out notifications to abutters, so they did notify all the new abutters, but it's not reflected on this map.
It has to be. If you're gonna sign it, it's gotta be accurate.
Mr. Chairman, we don't expect you to sign that tonight. We expect that the conditions of approval will go through it, and then we'll bring back whatever Mylar you need to do. We didn't have the surveyor stamp it because of the changes that were made. That will come back, and the Mylars will be stamped by the surveyor.
Okay. All right. So, can you address on when you come back, I mean, I know you did send out letters to abutters, but to make it all square, can we get it on the map to reflect the current abutters?
Whatever the town has on file for the current
Right,
abutters.
okay, so maybe, I don't know if that's the case with
That's the problem with some of them, that
Right.
get sold, it doesn't get updated on the town records for a
So
year.
this could be partially our fault too for some of the records here, so maybe
Well, it's a
we'll
state law thing, when homes are sold, the property owner stays, like if it's sold after April 1st, then the prior property owner remains.
Right. But
So it
we'll-
takes a year.
if you can send me an updated list of whatever it is, then we'll be happy to change it.
Well, we already did that too. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think that's what we need to really cement these conditions here. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to hear from the audience here. So we're looking at the buffer and the development on the road, is it?
And then the 10-year,
The 10-year moratorium.
map needs to get updated with whatever.
We
the
have
most
to
recent
also put
tax.
details in on, if we mention Hussey Road needs to be improved, that the developer
Yeah,
needs to set a bond for repair of Hussey Road or meeting the state's requirement.
Anything else from the board?
So let's make clear, when are we gonna set are you gonna write that up, or?
What, the conditions?
The conditions, when are we
Yeah,
gonna?
and we have some form stuff I can get from Lindsay here.
Because we are reviewing,
Yeah, we
finalize it,
it.
based on this discussion, and then those are the conditions.
All right. Alright, so, just some of the things. Any other questions for the Lots of Woods crew? You guys have any questions for us?
No, so how will we find out what the condition you're gonna?
I think that's, so we'll, maybe I'll sit down tomorrow, what do we, send it in an email? I mean, we'll actually write it out in, you know, nice word form for you, so you can get exactly what we need. Maybe I'll sit with one of these guys afterwards, we'll get it figured out and get it to you in an email tomorrow.
That's fine, that's fine.
That's fine. What I'm assuming is you will vote tonight, and then it will be conditioned on that final text being written, and then at the next meeting, you can sign the final conditions of approval and the Mylars at that time.
Okay.
We're gonna have one more meeting on this one, and just do everything. Vote on it and everything, get it all set.
We're gonna vote on conditions tonight, right?
Yeah, well, we've got the conditions pretty much figured out. I think basically you want us to vote on the application tonight. We'll cement the conditions and Mr. Anderson?
I think that the town's lawyer should check conditions to make sure that they are hold-free, shall we say?
Well, we can always send them over to them after,
You guys have to get select board approval.
right.
Contact the lawyer. So
I mean, the
that's
conditions
another,
aren't terribly
like,
complex
down
here
the road.
either, so I don't know, I mean, if we write the conditions up and vote on this and send them over to the town lawyer with approval, we can always do reconsideration if it's an issue.
Absolutely, let's do vote. Issues. Town council.
Alright, so, I guess we're at the point where we're gonna be voting on this thing. So, Ms. Lane.
Thank you. Since you're gonna be voting, I have one more question because it's really never been clarified and the applicant is not gonna like this, but the driveway permits. Now, Mr. Larry issued driveway permits to Hussey Road back in January of 2018. It was 2 weeks after he sent that email to DOT putting a rush on the speed limit change. Somebody mentioned SOP at the last meeting. You're unsure. Mr. Adelman's very adamant that no driveway permits are needed, but if that is true, why before likely any of you were on the board were driveway permits issued to Hussey Road? And also, if you pull up those driveway permits, Mr. Mudgett's name is at the top, but at the bottom it says, and I'm gonna paraphrase, but you can look at these permits that were issued when they had houses on Hussey Road. If this is on a state road, staple the DOT permit to this. So if you don't need a town and a DOT permit on a state road, why would you staple it to something you don't need? So I still feel you need to figure out where it says they don't need to issue these driveway permits because you've done it in the past. The precedent has been set. I mean, it was only on Hussey Road, it should have been on the state road too. But you now have houses on Hussey Road again after they were non-existent for, I don't know, what, a year and a half, I have to guess. But it was January 2018.
And you guys speak to that, the driveway permits?
I haven't seen anywhere where it specifies that a driveway permit needs to be given
It's
to
assuring the
prove.
standard.
It might be an assuring the standard, but it's not in the ordinance that a permit needs to be sent or created at that time.
We get the
I am-
permit
To approve it.
when we file for the building permit.
It's
we
not
file
in
for
the
driveway.
ordinance that says that it needs to be done in order to approve.
It needs
They've
to be
given us the
shown.
plan, they've given us the travel, data. It doesn't say that it has to be a permit in order to proceed.
So why was it issued prior? But you
I don't know, I
won't,
wasn't
you won't
part of it.
ensure it's
None
issued
of us,
now.
we can't answer that because none of
But
us
maybe
were
you
part of
don't
it.
understand.
No,
No.
we don't issue the permits. That's
But where do
issued
you
by
see
the,
that?
that's, what's that?
Where do you see that?
Where do I see what?
That you don't need to ensure the site distance?
We didn't, no, well, it's not,
We have insured the site.
we
distance
have
by
insured the
hiring
site
us.
distance. Nobody said we don't need to insure the site distance. We don't issue the actual permit.
Larry does.
The road agent, road commissioner issues the permits according to our website, when they're applied for. We have to make sure that the application shows that the intended locations will meet our ordinance. And that's what we've done by having someone review
Isn't
it.
that what a permit does?
No, a permit gives someone permission to create
No, a
that.
permit ensures.
We don't
that it
issue a
meets the
permit.
Standards. Mr. Larry does.
That's
I've
right.
heard
I
this
think it's
before.
not very fruitful to continue this discussion. We've been over,
Okay.
we've had all kinds of input on the driveway permits. I can't believe that everybody we've consulted would miss this central point.
All right, so, all right, well, I guess if there's no other concerns, we should vote on this thing.
The conditions of approval
Yeah.
are, can you read off what our,
Sure.
can you go through our list of
Conditions of approval would be no development for 10 years. Unless,
Exception of an estate.
For an estate.
sorry, no subdivision, I guess we'll say, for 10 years.
Of any kind, minor, major.
A moratorium on subdivision.
Yeah, for a 10-year moratorium on subdivision, and the buffer should be replanted all at the same time. So if there is a subdivision in 10 years, then Hussey Road would have to be brought up to current standards
And the
at the developer's
developer's
expense. Okay.
expense.
So that's it, that would be the conditions, or?
And then these as well, the application must include in its homeowners association documents the
Right.
requirement that brush be maintained on the side of the driveways to ensure site distances continuously met. The buffers on each lot must be planted in accordance, we've already gone over that one because we're doing that all at once.
We have to be a little more specific about when that planting actually occurs, because they might not sell a lot for 5 years.
They can do it any way they want, anytime they want, as long as they do it all at once, as far as I'm concerned. As soon as they sell the first lot, let's put it that way.
Okay, so at the selling of the first lot, the entire buffer has to be restored. It has to be put in that way. I'm just asking for specific,
Yeah.
because we know the slippery slope for it.
You want me to keep
In that,
Yeah.
so the three of you that also are voting, then that's something you agree with? You guys want to see that all at once?
Sure.
Okay.
The area of 14.33 acres retained by applicant identified on the approved plan shall remain open space and undeveloped. Any construction on the retained area of 13.73 acres along Hussey Road identified on the approved plan will be limited to one house without planning board approval. In order
No,
to
just one house. Just one house. Take out without planning board approval. Because what follows is 10 years.
Yeah, well, this is the one they supplied, so we've
We gotta change.
we've rewritten number 4.
We can change that.
All conditions and restrictions set forth in general notes on approved plan are incorporated into and made a condition of the final approval. The applicant will comply with all terms and conditions of the town of Parsonsville ordinances and subdivision regulations and all of the applicable federal and state regulations and approvals, as well as all those specified in the final application, all of which are incorporated herein by reference. So those are the conditions.
All right. All right, anything else?
Just that it runs by our lawyer. Runs by a town lawyer.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, we could take a final vote now. I'm a little
right.
concerned about putting the cart before the horse.
That's why I said we're gonna have another meeting.
No, I mean, we can vote on it pending,
Sure,
First.
sure.
First we have a quorum.
We do.
Right.
Yeah, we do. All right, so, I guess we'll take it to a vote. We'll get the, conditions squared away, and then request through the select board to send it off for review by the lawyer. And, take it from there. If we have to, call for reconsideration, we will. So, I guess I make a motion to approve the Watson Woods is complete, final plan is complete.
based on the current conditions.
With the application of the current conditions, yeah.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, the motion passes. I guess we'll get the conditions squared away for you guys, get them sent to you. And,
We'll add a note to the drawing that says it's approved with conditions, and we'll probably record the conditions of approval at the same time we record the Mylar, so that they're on the registry.
okay, all right, I guess that's it, and I guess I need to see you at the next meeting.
You will.
Okay. That's gonna take a little bit of work tomorrow to get this figured out. Yeah, I might be calling on you. All right, so what do we have next here?
Reed Lane site plan review.
So this is just to see if the application is complete, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Or is it village residential? This is just to see if the application is complete, right? It wasn't complete the first time.
So Reed Lane.
It's village residential. So is this
a
a,
Newfield with butters here?
is this an update to the previous package?
Yeah, I think it is, because I didn't bring the other package and I don't see the deed and stuff. I think that was submitted before. I didn't bring the other
Want this one?
package. You have one there?
Not one.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll give it back to you. Okay, so it's got the deed here.
So should we just go through this checklist?
Yeah, here's the deed from the last submission, so we've got that there. Alright, so,
So names, addresses, and phone numbers of owners of record and of applicant if different. So I would say that there's a yes on that.
yes, yeah. Where are you going, at the land use?
Yes.
On the back of that.
Page 7, which is just the submission information. We're just gonna go through and check these off.
Yep.
See if it's complete.
Right.
Name of proposed development.
Not applicable, private development.
Okay. Names and addresses of all property owners within 500 feet of the edge of the property lines of the proposed development.
Seems to
I
be
think
that.
that, and then the new field. It's been updated. This is the new field side.
Yeah.
Number 3, I would say is met. Sketch map showing general location of the site in the town.
Date.
I believe that's, was in this, that one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was down 4. Boundaries of all contiguous properties under the control of the owner or applicant, regardless of whether all or part is being developed at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. New map.
Copy of deed to the property, option to purchase the property or other document.
That's in the former submission there. So we've got that.
The name, registration number, and seal of the land surveyor, architect, engineer, and or similar professional who prepared any plan.
Yeah,
Applicable.
we need a request for it.
The bearings and distances of all property lines of the property to be developed, and the source of this information.
Yeah, that seems to be covered in the sketch there. Yeah, it's, all that's covered in the
What's
sketch,
the-
I think.
The source of the information, right?
You did this yourself, right?
I have a question.
Sure, just one
We
second,
all
sir.
received this letter from Cindy Wilson,
Yes, sir.
because right away is not something.
Source of information. Location and size of any existing sewer and water mains, culverts, and drains that will serve the development, whether on or off the property, along with the direction of existing surface water and across the site.
I see a culvert listed on, yeah, I see them.
Well, culvert, septic, leach field, well.
Yeah, I see them listed on the sketch.
Okay, so that suffices for that?
Yeah.
Location, names, and present widths of existing streets and right-of-ways within or adjacent to the proposed development.
Yep, that's there.
Location, dimensions, and ground floor elevations above ground level of all existing buildings on site. Have dimensions of.
So do we really need to know what's all the buildings are there?
Well, but I don't have dimensions either.
Myself and my lawyer called her over there and asked her about it directly. She said that was kind of an optional thing that you guys would. She gave you somewhat of a map there, topographical, so you could just see.
Do you know what dimensions of the buildings are? Yeah, no, I don't recall that either.
It does give the locations.
Right. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Here is an analyze. This is what the design can do. Yeah, sorry, those, yeah. Yeah, sorry, location, dimensions of existing driveways, streets, parking, and loading areas and walkways on the site. See existing parking.
Yeah.
Locations of roads or driveways within 200 feet of the site.
Yeah, looks like they're all there.
Location of intersecting roads or driveway, I just did that one, sorry. The location of open drainage courses, wetlands, and stands of trees and other important natural features on the site with a description of the features being retained. I mean, all of it's being retained, right? So we have pond here, woods. Location, front view, and dimensions of existing signs. There's no existing sign. And that's the proposed sign.
What was the
That's in section
dimension?
C.
What was the dimension of
2
the?
by 3.
What?
2 by 3 feet.
Guessing that's the foot.
Just to make sure. Yeah.
There's a small sign.
All right, and then that last one, easements, covenants, or deed restrictions.
So that's something that I need to address in here entirely.
What the easement for the, did you have an easement for that, for your driveway? I know we saw the one from Miss Wilson.
Yep.
Was that submitted in the first application? Yeah.
Any exterior lighting, exterior lighting proposed?
No, just my regular outside light on the house.
Yeah, main covenants. Easement right away leading to Maple, so-called upon over the frost and through certain parcels of land now or formerly of Sarah G. Reed.
And do you see any restrictions in there? Because that's part of the concern, you know, I didn't see any. I think I recall reading it the first meeting, I didn't see any.
We get to, but yeah.
Specific.
Yeah, with no restrictions though. I mean, if, you know, that was part of the concern. And
Right, but I mean.
I think we got some legal advice on that too,
Yeah,
didn't
you
we?
guys aren't obligated to.
Yeah, we can't.
I don't,
weigh in on that.
yeah, I know, but I mean, if there is a.
Right, so he's got it.
It's
He's
part of the application.
Yep, so it's there.
Rest of that.
So the rest of that is development stuff, I think.
Yeah, locations of buildings, setbacks, yards, and buffers required by this or other town ordinances. The location, dimensions, ground floor, proposed, we already want, nothing being built. Proposed driveways. Location, dimensions of all provisions of water supply and water disposal. Direction and route of proposed surface water drainage. Location, quantity, and dimensions of proposed signs. So he only has the proposed signs.
Zoning map here, show that, is it zoning map? Zoning regulation.
Why,
This is, yeah.
So the rest of that stuff doesn't look like it really applies.
make a motion, we vote the application complete.
Second. Is it going for questions about any?
No, this is just whether or not the application is complete.
Oh, because that's what I have,
So you have a concern it's not complete?
yes.
Okay, so what's your concern?
Well, I have kind of something to read here, but I have copies for you guys.
Does
Can
it
you
pertain to
address
the
it in the
completeness of the
format that we
application?
just used? If he's gonna address whether it's complete or not, let him use our format.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's just gonna be another mudslinging.
Right.
It's no mudslinging, it's
No.
just ordinance.
Okay.
No, but is it relevant to the completeness of the application?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even if you find it isn't, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
more than happy to stop. I mean, I don't know, I look over the ordinances and so, let's see. So I still think it's incomplete.
Why don't we go right to that?
What's that?
Why don't we go right to what you think it's,
Yeah,
what it's like?
well, a lot of it's on page 97 to 99.
Mhm.
And I guess a big part of it is regarding the sketch of the site plan that's been submitted. So, let's see, on page 97, again, I can give you a copy of this later, but Section 5. Maps or drawings must be at scale sufficient to allow review of the items listed under approved criteria, but in no case shall be more than 50 feet to the inch, that proportion of tract of land proposed for development. Right? So there's no scale on the sketch. The reason for the scale is requirement is obvious to ensure that a site plan accurately depicts existing conditions and proposed development activity, because without an accurate plan, you can't make that determinations such as setbacks from wetlands, status of existing driveway, and all the steps taken to come into compliance to be a business use. Also, there's the question of a turnaround for, I'll get to that in a little bit, about a fire. That's part of the ordinance too. Second, let's see. The standards clearly contemplate that the site would be prepared by a land surveyor, engineer, or similar professional. In addition to the scale requirement under section B1 on page 98, the plan is required to have bearings and distances. The bearings and distances are done by surveyors or engineers in existing uses. The sketch before you doesn't have any bearings, it doesn't have any actual distances, but it's really just estimates. Yeah. So let's see, now I'm jumping back. Do you want me to keep going, or do you?
No, hold on.
Okay.
No, sorry. I mean, I'm just reading that.
General submission information, site plan review.
I mean, I think some of that is pertains specifically to.
Yeah.
Development.
Yeah.
For existing, I think it says for development and also for commercial use or change of use. Which this is a change from, I think, residential to commercial. I think, for sure.
I guess some of this could be put under a microscope later, but I think as far as I mean.
Well, this is for the completion of the application, so if you can't complete the application, how can you?
No, it looks, I mean, it might not be complete to the standard you're setting in your mind, which is not, you know, I think you're kind of.
I'm just looking at the ordinance.
Oh, yeah, no, I know the ordinance, I know what you're talking about, it's, yeah, I mean, you can look at it and make a determination that's, you know, you're interpreting things a little stricter than maybe what they are, because.
Well, I have to live next to it, see, I'm against it.
Indeed, I
Yeah.
get it,
Okay.
I get it, so yeah, that would make sense that you would
All right,
interpret it.
so I have I think I have the right to.
Oh, yeah, I didn't say you don't have the right, but.
So let's talk about our previous practice in this regard.
What's that?
Haven't we always entertained these kind of sketch maps?
Yeah,
since I've been
absolutely.
From individual applicants?
Yeah, as part of a complete application, but bear in mind that the information provided by it may not necessarily be adequate for us to make a decision. We may seek additional information.
Yeah.
To clarify.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Those
That
sorts
was part of
things.
something too I thought about, yeah.
But just to submit as their record of that, if we find that the information contained doesn't give us the information we need to make a decision, then we would have to seek more information from the applicant for sure.
Oh.
But we're essentially just saying, have they completed the minimum requirement?
Right.
And
So
I
you
think to Mr. Yale's point is that this is pretty typical of what we accept, at least for the application. It doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to require more information, or we might have to ask more, but they've submitted their site plan, and
There'll still be.
there'll be a lot of, there may be many questions that arise just from this. But this is simply to determine whether or not.
Oh, I thought that
minimum's
this would be
there.
part of the application, the
It is
site,
part of
the
it.
site plan, the actual map.
It's really just,
Or no.
we're initially determining if we can move forward on this, you know, and that's kind of what it is. It's not, maybe in your mind where you want to see something a little more professional like what we did with Watson Woods. We're not at that point yet, you know, this is sort of just to start the ball rolling here.
Okay.
And Andy's right, we have entertained these sketches for pretty much every site plan review. This
I
way,
think the question comes.
Is that in the ordinance, or that's just an agreement that you guys have?
It's never been verbalized before, it's just been practiced.
right, yeah.
But by a multitude of.
Yeah, I think that's SOP for, you know, pretty much, I mean, if it were a $1 million development, it wouldn't be the same, right? It's not. At some point, we probably will need more detailed information. We will do a site walk. We will verify to see if these things match up. If we find out they're wrong, then we'll deal with that.
Okay.
The problem becomes that, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and you are coming from the ordinance. But we're dealing, you know, with people in this community, we can't impose too much of a financial burden to, you know, to at least bring the thing forward.
Yeah, for the initial, I mean, at some point, we might need to.
How about financial burden
On
to
us.
the abutters?
Right.
Our property value goes down because of this.
We haven't made any decision yet. We're
Well,
just
I'm
talking
just
about-
saying,
yeah.
that's what happens. He's talking, you don't wanna make a plan that is expensive to the one that's making.
No, eventually, if it needs, you know, if you need to accrue expense, you will. But with this initial submission, we can't make this too complicated. This is just a very initial submission to kind of start working on this thing here. So at some point, we will have to address this further, and we will have to verify some of this stuff.
First of all, if you're gonna be bugging me about it and saying the value of properties is going down, shouldn't you at least own the property you're bitching about?
Yeah, we don't even want to address that. Yeah, that's not.
You don't even live there.
That's not.
Okay, so, again, this might not make you happy, but this probably does look complete to me for the evening. I mean, I think, again, we'll have to, I expect to see you back, right? We're gonna have to get into this.
Sure, yeah.
But as far as an initial submission,
Right. Oh, so none of these ordinances are relevant?
well,
No, I mean, that map is just throw it out. That's
I'm
what
ju-
it
I'm
boils
just-
down to.
No, that's,
So,
You guys have watched this whole process to some degree with Watson Woods, right? I mean, at least you've been here for a couple of meetings to see.
Yes,
See, there's nothing progresses rapidly, you know, so we gotta at least get to step one before we get to
But
step.
it's been 3 years, it's already been going on.
that really doesn't have anything to do with us, though. We just saw it a couple months ago, and we'll get through it, and we'll, you know, expect to see you at the meetings, and we'll work through this, but initially, as far as the submission goes, I don't have any more questions. You guys want to address this, or?
So,
To maybe clarify again, like what you're saying is those ordinances are important, and we're just not there going through. But we're just saying, has he provided every piece of paperwork that we request as a board?
We're not grading the
And
paper.
yes, he has.
It's whether or not they turned it in.
And so after this, we will go through a finding of facts. So we will go through this with a fine-tooth comb. We will have a public hearing. We will have a site walk where we'll actually go to the location, walk it, see it firsthand. So your points are valid. It's just maybe we're not quite there yet.
Oh, okay.
You know, because this is like Brendan said. This is just I've turned in my homework, and now once we say you've turned in the homework, now we have to grade it.
I mean, we may need more information. It's just, you know.
We probably will.
But we don't say, oh, no, it doesn't count until we get all the information. We
You know,
need an open we'll look at it.
And just while we're here too, just speaking on the letter, you know, as I read through, like, I don't know how much, you know, the daily average, but as far as, you know, timing, like, as far as open hours, like, as a business, like, those are gonna have to be defined. There's gonna have to be defined, I'm working from here to here, and that would have to be set. It can't be whenever. So it does have to be, like, when we did the commercial composting, part of the conditions and requirements is for him to explain to us when his hours of operation would be.
And also, I think that we have to take into consideration is, are we gonna let residential become commercial anytime we want?
This is village residential.
Village residential.
Village residential holds ability, and that's the purpose of the village, is to have a mixture, have a mixture of uses.
I disagree.
I might be there with you, but this is the position we're in. Is I've got a map there. It says that section is village residential, and I've got a set of uses that say in village residential, a auto wreck small engine repair shop is a site plan review, and that's where we're at. You know, so I'm not making the rules up. I'm going by what the town has voted in over the past however many years.
Well, there's quite a few. Should I leave this with you guys?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you ever, you know, if you want to get, sometimes it's helpful to get it to us before meetings. So if you send it to the planning board email, we'll be.
It becomes part of the record when you send it to the planning board email.
Right. So we're not dismissing. We're not dismissing.
We look at it,
and we will take it all into consideration. And you know, it's very valid points.
Yeah.
But we're also not at the point where we're nitpicking every little piece yet.
Right.
We're just
we're not at the battle yet. We're just in the pre-planning. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And I just want to make sure you understand that your concerns will get heard. You have, of course, no decisions getting made tonight on how this is going to end up. Just has the applicant submitted all required information. And I understand that you might dispute that they have, but. Again,
I do dispute it, actually. That's on record. I dispute the application.
And you've heard our reasons for accepting it as it is. And I mean, and certainly you can continue to dispute that. I mean, I just, but we're not making decisions on it, other than if they turn, you know, as far as the outcome of the application.
Right.
So that so the due process for everybody can unfold, including yourself.
Okay.
Motion complete?
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, Danny. I don't want to cut you off.
Okay, well, I guess I was confused because I thought that an application was, I mean.
Except that it's different from approved.
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Because as we go through this,
Except
we
it
can
is.
request changes.
There's going to be all kinds of changes that may be requested. Major changes, costly changes, not by.
Including some of the information you may have brought up.
Okay.
But it's initially that they submitted the, you know,
Okay.
what has historically been accepted as a minimum standard for
All right,
an application.
well, gee, all that reviewing of the ordinance I did all over the,
Oh, it's,
You'll
it's not,
use
it's not for
it.
nothing.
You'll
Oh, yeah.
use it.
Okay.
It's not-
We've got an open
moment.
spot too.
It's gonna.
I got some good ones too.
We've got an
Thank
open
you.
spot on the
Yeah,
board.
I appreciate it, thanks for understanding.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept the application for Reed Lane
As complete.
as complete.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, so the application's been accepted as complete. So I guess you know what to do from there, right? No?
Nobody's.
Okay, so we'll send you a receipt for a completed application. And at that point, I'm not sure what does.
You gotta schedule a site plan.
Site.
Yeah.
So, site plan.
All right. So, should we schedule something then? Are we gonna wanna do, we're gonna wanna do a site walk?
Yes.
Yep.
I think we got it.
So, all right, if we wanna do a site walk, what are we looking at as far as, times?
Saturdays.
Saturday?
Can we come to your place on a Saturday?
Oh, yeah.
Let me know.
All right, I couldn't do it this Saturday.
We need to give them enough time.
Yeah.
We wanna do it
before snow.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah, we gotta put
And I'd
it
say,
in.
oh, you know.
Yeah, that's
only for
subdivision. That's
Oh, it's
subdivision.
only for subdivision.
I'd like to do it before the snow.
Yes.
we wanna be able to see that.
Yeah.
So if,
27?
we gotta get it in the paper for 2 weeks.
One.
1 week,
One.
7 days.
Subdivision's 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 week, so we could do it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Too late to get it in the paper this week, huh?
right. I'd
So
have
it
to,
goes in on
Thursday.
23rd.
So your
first anytime after Saturday the would be- 21st.
Anytime after the 21st.
It goes in on the 23rd, it's gotta be a week's notice, first Friday. First Saturday is gonna be November 3rd.
no, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Anytime after the 23rd, because the paper comes out on the 23rd. I have to
Anytime
put it
after
in
the
by the
23rd, so it could be the 27th.
It could be.
Could be November 3rd.
27th is a Sunday.
Ain't gonna be home. 26th.
Yeah.
Excuse me, could it be like the November 3rd one, if at all
Yeah.
possible?
Yeah, that works.
The only thing I tell you is if it snows, we can't do it.
Yes, we can.
No, it's an ordinance.
No,
Hey, that's subdivision ordinance, Eddie?
subdivision.
That's it, that's.
Is that just subdivision?
Yeah.
Yeah, shell shock, man.
So that would be the second,
Traumatized.
that would be the
No,
second, that's a
it's
Saturday.
November
Only for
2nd.
subdivision.
Sidewalk.
So that would be Saturday, November 2nd.
Okay.
Sidewalk.
What time?
You guys can come to that as well, it's open to the public.
What time?
I know you're gonna be there.
You're gonna admit you
We
would.
live there.
10 a.m.? Is that 10 a.m.?
10 days half over if you want to, sure.
It's at
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Yeah, all right.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
November 2nd, 10 a.m.
No problem.
What's it, 26 Reed Lane? Should we schedule a public hearing now? I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have to have a public hearing. I don't know if we should have the site walk first and then schedule a public hearing,
I
or,
think we better have it first, so we know what we're looking at.
right, but we could go ahead and schedule the public
We could,
hearing.
yeah.
So the meeting for November is on
I was just
the,
gonna say, I say, schedule the sidewalk, let's do the sidewalk and see what comes up.
and then discuss it
That
at the
gives us-
meeting?
That gives us time to, compare that to this application.
Yes.
And then based on that, we can then schedule our.
Because we may be requesting additional information after the
Right,
sidewalk
right, right.
prior
Okay.
to the public.
So no scheduling of a public hearing, we'll go with the site walk, we'll address it at the meeting on the 19th. Figure it out.
Does a cease and desist order still stay in effect?
I believe so, but that's code enforcement officer. We don't have any enforcement powers at all.
It does do it.
Yeah. Okay, so. All right, so that means, we'll get you a receipt for a completed application, and we've got the site walk scheduled for November 2nd at 10 a.m. Then we have the meeting on the 19th, and we can discuss it from there. We'll probably have to have a public hearing after that. So we'll see you on the 19th, or we'll see you on the 2nd.
Right.
We'll see you here on the 19th. Okay, I think that's it for that one. It looks like we had something else on the agenda, but not here. Not here. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was. As far as sending out the receipt, do you just do that, or do I need to come up and fill? I mean,
No, I'll do it. If you want to talk about procedures afterwards.
okay, all right, yeah, we'll do
I
that.
need a little clarity.
Yep, and I've got to figure some things out myself. So after the meeting,
Just a little light reading. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no way do, like, we don't want anyone to feel like we're not listening to it, like, our job is to.
What happens is if we start listening to all the objections,
Oh,
we never move forward. But
we've been there. We've been there.
And then I'm sure you guys were like, government of any kind.
I'm sorry if I was up
Pretty much goes at sales pace.
hair trigger with that.
No, I understand that.
You just want, it gives every applicant the same avenue and.
Oh, so this is for
Right.
what we just did. This is not for the current one.
So as the abutters,
What's that?
you mean as the
Yeah.
abutters?
Abutters, the applicant, and everybody in the town it all has to all go through the same avenue, the same path, so that everybody has equal and fair chance to speak their piece and for us to review the ordinance and apply it.
All right,
So we are moving on to.
This guy's coming with a redemption center, it's not a permitted use, per se. Unless it falls under public utility, transfer station or waste disposal landfill.
Well, that's why we have to bring our ordinances up to snuff, because there didn't used to be redemption centers.
Oh, there was one
Yeah.
right where
Decades ago.
There was a
There was,
redemption
there was
center
the
to
tire,
the
old tire
wall.
shed,
Okay.
right at the bottom of my hill, right, an old redemption center. And then there was one across on Elm Street from my grandmother's house.
Yeah,
So there was two of them.
and want to keep the
I'm
problem.
only 35, as you
So
said, I'm
maybe
pretty
it's-
young, so, you know, it's a lot of
Maybe
stuff.
it's permissible under a different name, that's what I'm asking.
So we have to add that in.
Sure.
I mean, are they really hazard? I mean, what's the pushback against traffic? or
There's
what?
traffic, large trucks, you know, coming up the car.
Absolutely, yes.
So again, this is just for a pre-application meeting to see if the application is complete.
Well, you can't.
We were missing some stuff last time.
Didn't bring any old submissions, so.
You want, these should be all together.
Do you have that old submission to the last one?
I mean, I think I have it.
The one that I just made, I just want to do that for I didn't bring any old submissions, so. But
Here,
That's the original.
that's, okay, and I just put the other one back right here. All right, so here you go. There is?
So we're just going.
Sure, we can just go off the cover sheet.
Name, addresses, phone numbers, and phone record of applicant.
Grant,
you go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
yeah. I'm not sure how you can do a complete application when you don't know the use, the permitted use.
Well, that's what I think, but.
There's no permitted use listed in your ordinance.
But there's, I mean, so,
But the process is we're supposed to apply it to something that's reasonable, that's what it says.
Oh, so what has been chosen? I just.
Nothing has, we're just looking at the application to see if it's.
Solve that before we proceed, I mean, what's the
I would agree with that. I don't want to waste anyone's time with all of a sudden we decide it's not.
I could read you,
I mean,
Okay.
I don't understand.
We gotta get through this stuff first, man. I mean, see, we gotta get through this. That's part of the problem, right?
We're discussing, or I think we're
I
discussing.
mean, I think if I could read a definition for you, would that help?
Sure.
That's it, yeah.
What page you want, so ahead.
Page A4, your definitions. I'm just, any building or group of buildings used primarily to receive goods and materials and retransport these goods and materials primarily by truck to other locations. So that's a distribution terminal trucking. That's a similar use.
You must have been a different 84 than
A4, the definitions.
Yeah.
Oh, the definition.
Appendix
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, but they used to.
So that definition seems like it might apply, but where does that leave us?
But that's not where we're at. That's the question of whether or not, what kind of business it is. We didn't know if he's supplied us all the information.
Right.
To complete the application.
I do think that's the procedure there, right? I mean, or one of the first things we do is determine if, but also if, like, what's the word for it, if they have standing from us, or if, you know, that is part of what we're supposed to do, to determine.
What? But if he has a deed to the property, it gives him standing.
Yeah, you might be right.
That's why you have to have
He owns it.
That's why you have to show title or interest, because that gives you standing.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense.
Or intent to purchase. Standing. Right. Does he have standing to apply?
Yes.
Yes. That's been that.
Yes. So, I guess I'm gonna bring this Brendan, maybe we go over and see if it's complete, and if it is or isn't, we, you know.
I don't see how it's different than any other process we've
Right, and then we make determinations
as to how
down
this
the
is
road.
going to work. There's a lot to look at.
Right, right.
I don't understand why you would try to determine whether something is complete or not.
I mean, so what else we can do, spin our wheels forever and determine whether we can.
We're gonna have to do that at some point, ain't you?
Yeah.
Why not do it up front?
But essentially, someone has title and interest and all the basic information. What is it that we're missing right now? I mean, what are we doing right now? You wanna go through the list, or you don't wanna go through the list?
You want to determine if it's,
I wanna see if it's,
applicable to-
yeah, if we even
Okay,
have,
so where do we start with that? Like really, where do
we got a table of permitted uses in here, right?
Yeah, and we've already determined it's not in there, right?
That doesn't mean that it's not automatic.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have every permissible use ever.
That's not, we have to then determine whether or not it will fit into something similar.
Right.
We have to go through that process, but we still have to have a complete application before we start that process.
Right.
You know?
All right,
Doesn't mean
we're
we're
not
not
doing it that
accepting-
way, I'm not gonna argue too much, it just seems like a waste of time.
But you're essentially saying that we have to decide, but that would be deciding the outcome of the application without even accepting the application as complete, to say that it's not permitted. It's not whether it's permitted use.
If I got a shoe store, somebody comes and wants pizza, am I gonna go through his application and tell him whether it's complete or not?
Right, exactly right.
But that's not the same.
I understand you got some issues of law, right? Is that what you're
No,
talking
what I'm saying is, look, that our job right now is to determine whether or not it's allowed. We have to determine whether or not it's got a complete application, then we can review
I
it.
think it's possible to reject an application because it isn't in our permitted use. However, we could call a public meeting to have a vote on an ordinance that needs to be updated. We can't, You know, any ordinance we wanna change or add to has to be approved by
What do you guys do with
public.
the Walker building though? You didn't have a permitted use.
Before
in
you
the
have,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
have to,
Yeah.
before you make a decision on anything, you have to have an application, otherwise you're not even allowing the person to
All
make
right,
their
due
application.
process,
Due
is that what you're saying?
process,
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough.
It's not, we're not making a decision on anything other than, is the application complete?
Okay. I'll accept that, I'll accept that. I don't
That's
think we
all.
need to go any further.
All right.
Even though I think it's wrong.
Cart before the horse.
All right, so let's start here. Let's see, name and address of all property owners within 500 feet. Is it in there? Let's see at the back. Okay. All right. Sketch map showing general location of site within the town. That would be that. Okay.
It's a smaller version than I bought in. I bought it in a big map.
Boundaries of all contiguous property under control of the owner. I guess that's what this is also. Yeah. Copy of the deed. That's in there. Name, registration number, and seal of the land surveyor. Doesn't apply. No, wasn't the land surveyor necessary. Bearings and distance of all property lines.
That's missing.
Is it? Bearing.
Oh, wait a minute.
Would that be on the map?
Yeah, maybe I spoke to something.
It does have, it has group it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. G, location and size of any existing sewer, culverts, drains. Is that what we see here?
See, on the actual map, it shows CMP culverts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so is it there? Okay. All right. So H, location names and present width of existing streets. I guess that's gonna be on the, map right there. I, location, dimension, and ground floor elevations. Not applicable.
Locations, yeah, it is locations on here.
Yeah, just ground floor, all right, so yes, so it is there. J, location and dimension of existing driveways, that seems to be there too.
I don't see dimensions.
Yeah, just location, so we need dimensions on the driveway. Okay, location of intersecting roads within 200 feet. Yeah, I think so.
I have right of way there, I don't know if that's on it or not.
Right of way for,
My property up in front of your gate.
location, intersecting roads and driveways. 200 feet. What are you saying, you have a right of way within 200 feet?
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't have the map, but it might be on there, it might not be, I don't know. It's kind of right near the end of the corner of the property,
I see something here, is that?
Is it, it's within 200 feet?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, no, that's his property, mine is right here, it doesn't really show it, but yeah. It's right there.
That's not it.
No, that's a culvert.
Right,
Yeah.
coming up to the.
Actually, it's right here, yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, because there is a fence up there. My property's out from the fence.
Doesn't show it.
No, so maybe if we can get that,
Yep.
Take a look, give it
so that would be a right of way. Well, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Michael Nelligan.
Nelligan. So would it be possible to get Mr. Nelligan's right-of-way placed on the map here?
I got the map from,
Even if you just sketch it in with your hand, just hand sketch it in, so, you know, we know it exists.
well, I'd
If
have
it's
to
within-
drop you back of the big map that I gave you.
Yeah, if you need that.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, he doesn't mean the one with the gate up? The one
No.
with the gate up?
No,
Which one are you talking about then?
it's right next to.
If it's within 200 feet, that's what it calls for, if it's within
Okay.
200 feet of your property. If it's
It
beyond
won't-
200
It won't
feet,
show, it won't show it all on the map. It
right,
doesn't show on the map.
so.
On the copy of ours or on the one you submitted? Did you include that right of way on the of the map that you submitted with the application?
No, it's not, it's
Okay,
not,
we'll need to see it
it's
on the
not.
map. Okay.
So I have to go to Alfred again and get a map of his property now.
No, you have to sketch it in.
You just need to
I
give
can't-
us,
It won't sketch in, because my property line, if you want me to show you where my property line ends, and where he's talking about is down further.
But if you can provide us even a sketch you make showing that piece and your piece together.
Yeah, even
It
if
doesn't have to be from
Piece
Alfred.
of paper with the extensions.
You need to give us
Okay.
something,
Yeah.
even if you draw it out yourself, giving us.
Well, I don't draw very well.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be pretty, it
You
just
know,
has to
and
explain
you
where
can
it
see I
is.
don't
Give
draw
us
very well.
distances.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so, location of open drainage, courses, wetlands, stands of trees,
Not really on there.
or it doesn't even apply, I mean, what if there aren't any?
Well, if there ain't any, that's
Then-
good.
Then it needs to show that, this, you know. it should-
What,
it
show,
should- it
show
should
the
address that.
negative, show that there doesn't exist any of these things?
There's no trees here, there's nothing, there's something. It should be addressed. It doesn't
Well,
say one or the other.
okay, so we gotta tell them how to address it then.
So I've gotta make a list and hand it to him.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's go to M, location, front view and dimensions of existing and proposed sign. Any signs proposed?
Yes.
Yeah, were they in
You said
here?
they're gonna come, right? You said you're gonna bring them to us. but
Would
they
you like to see one right now?
That one?
I'll be like that.
Okay.
That needs to be with the application.
Right.
A piece of this.
I have to. I'm the worst one to be in charge of lists.
That's fine. Read that.
Yeah. So we need dimensions in the driveways.
Needed a copy of, you had it at the time, right there.
So just, in the application, we'll need, since you're already been doing some sketches, just the dimensions of your sign.
Just measure it.
Yeah, just,
Measure it out.
it just needs to, we just need it in paper form.
And I'm gonna put a sign down below with hours on it.
Yeah.
So hours are gonna be Wednesday, Sunday, 9 to 5.
Yep, so if you can include that, with the application as well.
But it's gonna be a sign all the time.
Yep, yeah, so just
Okay,
like,
that one.
just on your piece of paper, a rectangle with the words, rough dimensions of that sign, you know, you can add the little rectangle below with hours.
Destroy them.
Yeah, well, he's a better artist than I am.
Go to the neighbor, go get them.
Okay, so N would, location and dimension of any existing easement and 10 copies of existing covenant or deed restriction. Well, we've got the deeds.
Is there an easement for your resident?
But it doesn't pertain to Mr. Navarro's property.
Okay, so we've got that here. Proposed development activity, I don't think there is any proposed development activity, is there?
No.
No.
So we don't need his setbacks and stuff, existing ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, setbacks.
On the buildings here,
Yeah.
right, so the trailer, the house and shed. Is that what we're saying, setback from the buildings?
And it says,
Is that what we need, setback from the storage trailer? Is that the only thing you'd be using there for the redemption center, is a storage trailer?
No, I'd be using the shed that's down below.
Okay.
For bringing in the bottles and cans and so on and so forth.
Right.
And then they'd be moved up in plastic bags to the storage trailer.
Okay.
And that's where they.
We need to see some setbacks.
On the storage trailer, the shed,
Everything
well, what else is
that's
there?
being used.
That's it, the shed and the storage trailer?
That's it.
Yeah, we don't need the setbacks on his house.
No, any of the structures you plan to use.
No, just those two.
Okay, we'll need to see setbacks.
Setback from where the
And what, dimensions on those things too, or no?
Setbacks, any applicable setbacks, so if there's a property line, show the setbacks to it, so that we know what the setback to each property line is, whether it's the back, side, or front.
So you want a setback from,
The two structures you plan, you're proposing to use,
Yes.
we would need to see on a map, a setback for each one of those structures, like what the distance is to each relevant property line.
okay, so if there's somebody 425 feet up, you wanna see that?
No, I wanna see where your property line is relevant to that structure, so you have your shed, how far away is it from your property lines? That sort of thing, those are the setbacks.
This distance from here to here, that's your property line, right?
Yeah.
And this distance from here to here?
Yeah.
And then the distance, well, not the house, forget, this
Yeah.
distance from there to there, this distance from there to there, and there to there.
Oh, dimension.
Yeah, just measure them out and give us the dimensions.
Okay. Just make sure that I'm clear on that.
That it, the rest of that's proposed development activity, I don't think any of that applies. So, it looks like the application is not complete, there are a few things here that we are gonna need. Yeah, I think
Make a
we'll have
motion
to-
that we vote the application not complete,
Yeah,
we provide the applicant with a list of, necessary requirements.
a second.
All those in favor? All right. So it's not complete, but we'll let you know exactly what you need to complete it, and we'll get that mailed out to you. So it does look like we'll need the driveway dimensions, the sketch for Mr. Nelligan's right of way, your sign dimensions, and the setbacks on your trailer and your shed. That's pretty much it, that seemed pretty simple.
Whether or not,
So we'll get something mailed out to you that states that the application wasn't complete and what's needed.
Okay,
And
good
then maybe
enough.
we'll see you at the next meeting.
Yep, have a good one, thank
All
you.
right,
I
thank
mean,
you.
do you see where I'm coming from, or no?
What?
It's like, I'm saying, I think to me, like, this is,
That's it,
what we're talking about.
No.
Okay,
No,
I didn't.
You don't have to get to that,
All
but,
right, you're fair enough.
you know what I mean, but the application can still be complete.
Right.
You know, you could be applying for something that's not allowed, and technically, we still gotta give them a chance to show up for the application.
I'm a
but-
fan of your staff, man. I'm
Right,
right,
I don't think we can make it do that. You
Right,
know,
yes.
application's right, you can't change
Can we
it
do
one
it
way
after
or
we
two.
do it? So they just-
You know, I mean, and that way we can streamline the process to get to that point. And Doesn't got the hammer.
We have an issue here. We not state that this is-
Right.
What does the town, what do people want?
Maybe
The people have to vote.
we'll have to address that as a board. So.
Well, right, but as far as permissible use for this, I mean, you know, the way the ordinance reads is it's our job anywhere permissible use isn't specifically listed or prohibited, is to determine what applicable permissible use, if there's a permissible use that closely applies, then how to deal with that procedure. And that's almost exactly how the ordinance is written, which is pretty generic. But essentially, if something that doesn't appear on that list, we have to decide whether or not there's something on that list that it could, you know, it could relate to, and we have to start to use that as a basis for our decision making, as far as conditions or denial or approval.
Okay, so, we've got other business apparently. So it says selectmen request a warrant article for recreational marijuana from last workshop discussion.
Before we move on to that.
Oh, it's a nice simple one, right there.
Yeah, we already kind of have that, don't we?
Yeah, I'm not even sure
It's
what.
opt out or opt in or something, right?
Yeah.
Have we decided on that?
No, we haven't done anything.
I thought we decided, will the town vote to?
Yeah.
So remember we did medical marijuana?
Yep,
It's like
yep.
the same process.
Right.
That's
It
some
is.
information for you guys.
It's the same process, but we can do it in 2 different stages.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to
Right,
decide.
okay, but just know that if you opt in to recreational marijuana, you can vote to opt in. If you can vote to opt in with an ordinance or a temporary moratorium. If you don't opt in with either of those, and the town votes yes, then it's allowed by state law until you craft an ordinance.
Right, and I think the concern was that we opt in with a moratorium until the ordinances were finished. That was the concern I got from the select board, that we don't want to opt in and then it's wide open and then we've got a year to craft ordinances.
The other thing with the moratorium is the length of it could be 180 days, but the select board has authority to extend it if you guys don't meet that deadline.
Straightforward.
Yeah, it's straightforward until one option happens where the town votes to opt in, but backlash or what have you, and no ordinance is passed.
Then
That's my
what
biggest
happens
concern.
is you opt in and it's allowed by state law because the ordinance got voted down.
But what's allowed? All the statute.
Whatever's in state law, so there'd be no zoning, you could just
Right.
put a 20,000 square foot
So wait a
cultivation
minute, so
facility in
if the town votes to opt in, and then they vote down the ordinance, then state law becomes.
Yeah.
Then
there's no. Then it's a
So maybe we should do it the other way around.
That's. You know, that was my whole thing. Either way, it's like, you know, it streamlines the process, and if people don't opt in, well, it simplifies it.
But if you do decide to just opt in, like however you figure out, it's the same as before, like you're gonna have to have a public hearing on it,
Right.
then craft a question, send it to the select board, they set a special vote. And you guys just have to decide, do you wanna do it with an ordinance, with a moratorium, with neither?
So essentially, either voting to opt in with state ordinances, state law as they apply, or craft our own. I just don't think it's that simple. You know? So that's why I think it's harder than just a yes or no, it's opt in or not.
Right.
Cause
I'd love to just do the opt in, but I don't want to be in a situation where we.
While it's regulated by state law, while you make an ordinance, then by the time you make an ordinance, anything that's come in from that is grandfathered.
Yeah.
So someone could put a facility somewhere that pisses someone off.
Right.
Other than that,
I mean, I would be more, I would rather do the opt-in moratorium, gives us time, at least we kind of get a general consensus of what the town actually is.
Right.
And I understand the point.
Yeah.
I just at the same time,
people be trying to run out the clock on it.
So do you want, if you want to opt in with time, are you gonna have
A number of public hearings to have this discussion, or just one?
Or one.
One.
How about one?
Yeah.
Why a number?
The other thing you
Like,
could
we
do-
only need one, you know, like to talk about it.
Well,
one.
the time,
They don't want
yes,
to
the
show
time
up.
to be able to have the public to.
The other thing
Right,
is,
but
he
well,
wants-
it's mostly time for us to get them drafted. You
Yeah,
know?
so the way that I'm proposing then would be, we'd have the one public hearing for the opt-in question, the moratorium. And then we would have additional, public hearings once we're actually drafting.
Yeah.
That's the way we did it
In
last time.
case, yes, in the event that it doesn't pass at all, and
Because I mean,
People
we
don't
spent a
opt
lot
in.
of
Are
time
some
drafting the medical
circumstances
one,
with
and
extending the moratorium, and that's the one thing I'm not sure on. So the select board can do it, I think, under state statute. There might be something that has to apply to that. Like, they couldn't just be like, another 180 days for no reason.
Right.
And that's really up to them, I mean, by our
And
decision as a
you
board
Or
guys
if,
can-
to initiate.
yeah, if we haven't had a
change
chance to
ordinance.
actually get to it in 180 days and they say, look, it's not been crafted properly, you need more time.
Right.
Well, I think
I'm sure it wouldn't be too much of an issue. You guys can also, well, MMA would recommend you get your town attorney involved with crafting the ordinance because it's been historically, I guess, kind of an issue for other towns.
So do we need
Yeah.
to have a workshop about this stuff, or?
Can't we decide now
I
which
think
one
we need
we're
to have a
gonna
conversation right here and now, it's on the
Yeah.
agenda, so let's talk about it.
So,
Like I say.
you know, I'm gonna defer to you, you know, I really don't even have the strength or energy to deal with this one. I kind of I'll follow your lead here. What do you wanna do?
I mean, my attitude is, I just don't want us to be, whatever we do, I just don't want us to get trapped in a situation where we like, you know, things happen because, I don't know. You know, we opt in, and but then nobody, you know, then the town doesn't have any say in how they do it, and nobody has any part of that process.
I mean, can't we design it, like we said, with an opt-in with a moratorium
moratorium.
until the ordinance is crafted?
Sure.
I'm down with that.
And to craft that ordinance is you're gonna have to have several.
Yeah.
Several
we'll go through
public,
the
not, you won't be
process.
able to do it in
It
one.
just
You're gonna
saves
have to
us,
have-
it saves us the upfront time of having to
Yeah,
go through the whole thing if somebody's gonna vote that.
What, everybody shows up at the one
we
meeting?
could have informational public
Yeah.
meetings, but not a
I don't wanna drag it out for, you know what I mean, like, we're gonna have a timeline on it, so we can't drag it out, get it done,
workshops.
you know?
Yeah,
The only question I would have is in a worst-case scenario where, say, they vote to opt in, then vote down the ordinance, we subsequently craft, we should be familiar with what the provisions of the state laws, right? So we know what we're.
You guys
Well,
have
we
a
don't,
packet of
right? People who
information?
vote-
Well, I was gonna say, and
Yeah,
that, and
I
that
think-
needs to be.
what is that?
There's a packet of information
Right.
here, you guys,
For,
Yeah.
for recreational
for
marijuana?
recreational marijuana.
Well,
Okay.
I mean,
If we have a public hearing, we're gonna have to provide that
Who's that
information
from?
to what
That's
our
right.
meetings.
Right, so if we get past.
Everybody that
So
comes
is
in-
that, is there enough for all of us, or is that just?
I can print
we
off
get past
more.
the-
Okay, so maybe this might be something.
At that
I mean,
point,
there's links in
the
there,
public
Right.
will be
so you have to go, I
told,
mean,
like,
I can.
the town has voted this in. We're drafting these ordinances. If you don't vote these in, it still falls to the state and it's still
And we
like,
have
so
less-
as long as everyone would understand that voting down on the ordinance doesn't make it
So
go away.
most of these are blank.
It's
They're
the
not
first
printed out.
vote first that makes it yes or no. And then after that, it's are we doing state or are we doing town ordinances? And that's what we need to clarify.
It's a bitter pill, one way or the other.
Yeah, and I don't
They
want,
could be double bitter.
I'm not trivializing town involvement, I'm just saying like, you know, looking at historically, like, it's the same people that are gonna show up to the first one, that show up to the second one, all these meetings, so like, we have one, people show up, they have their piece, if they didn't get it out, they didn't get it out, you know? I don't wanna just keep beating it over their heads, cause it'll be the same people that come with the same opinion, so, you know, we have notification on social media, on our website, and in print. And there is a phone here, people can call.
Floating around too, or you just print them up
I don't
as
know,
needed?
no one seems to really want it.
So, do we keep them in the file, or they're just ones you pull up as
Let's
needed?
finish public hearing.
I think we're gonna need this, for,
If we do have a public hearing, we've gotta get something.
La Valley.
Well, if
And
it's
include
a-
application.
Yeah.
that has to be a separate.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
separate
You've got
discussion.
your-
Yeah.
I have this stuff too, if I need to draw from it.
Alright, so we're gonna need this for
The only
the
reason why it
Valley,
has
we're
to
gonna
be
need,
separate is because we're concerned about the
complete application one for, actually.
It's money for
Yeah.
us to do a public hearing, so we're trying to
I understand that too, but we also have certain things that we have to follow so that everyone gets their.
No, I got it.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to address? So as far as the recreational marijuana.
So where are we at with that?
Well, that's what I mean, right? We had a nice discussion, but, if they need a warrant article, we're gonna have to draw one up.
It'd be
Let's
a
do it right now.
question.
Which are we
I mean,
gonna do?
It's not
We're
gonna be
gonna
like,
do it
oh,
now?
ordinance
Yeah.
like
No,
four.
the opt-in with the or vote, with the moratorium.
So can we do it right now? I'm gonna take 10 minutes, it won't even take.
It would either be to opt
Well, you're
out,
gonna have a public
or to opt
hearing.
in with a
It's
180
just
day
like when you did the
moratorium.
medical stuff. You're gonna have to do a public hearing, then, come up with your verbiage, send it to the select board. They'll do a
Alright, so should
special
we
town
schedule a
vote.
public hearing then for
Yeah,
You
I don't know, I
want something
mean,
to present at the public hearing though, so you gotta like kind of figure out the verbiage.
I won't present anything.
We have to have the fact that we're presenting it either
Yeah.
an opt-in or opt-out. If you're opting in, it's 180 moratorium. If ordinances don't pass, but we have opted in, it's gonna be state law. Unless, until
So
we
you're gonna
extend.
basically come up with your warrant article, how you want the question to look, present it at the public hearing, take whatever feedback you get, and then go from there, you know, either to the select board or go back to the drawing board.
so does somebody wanna craft the language on the warrant article right now? I mean, is that?
Will the town vote to allow recreational marijuana facilities?
Well, pursuant to the creation of.
With a 100, that's the first one.
So
Will the
the-
town vote to allow recreational marijuana facilities? That's the basic thing,
I
right?
think it's opt-in is the term
It's
you wanna
opt-in.
use, yeah, cause
Mm,
then you're
will
getting
the
into
town
ordinance
opt
land.
in is what it should
That's
say?
how
To-
it's written,
the current state law.
in the state law. So you would
Are
be,
we,
does the
are
town
we
wanna
doing this
opt
as
in?
one question?
We probably should.
Any way we do it, someone's gonna have a problem.
Absolutely, but I mean, you know, the last time though, you know, we could do, will we opt into retail? Will we opt into?
Well, then
No,
now you're
people
getting
complain
into,
about
We did that last time and
Right,
then
but we had a
there was
lot-
too much information.
Well, we had,
Five
right, we
questions.
did have, but we had a lot in each question. But I think it's, will we opt into retail stores pending moratorium? Will we opt into
I think,
manufacturing?
I think it needs to be more like, are we gonna opt into the current?
Just leave it large and general.
Yeah, the main current state statutes pertaining to recreational
but if
adult
you have a
use.
moratorium,
Yeah, with a moratorium
yeah,
until the town has enacted its own ordinances and
So-
regulations.
I don't think there's any urgency. We could discuss this again at the next meeting. You know, I don't know. Lindsay said she's got an information pack from MMA. I'd like to read that and then kind of maybe figure out how to construct it. Unless you guys are ready to just lay the
No,
verbiage out. I'm
no,
not.
no,
you know.
I'm not either, but I think as long as we're on the same page of, are we doing one question with
Right.
moratorium? Are we doing multiple questions with moratorium?
I like the one question if it's feasible. You know.
Well, it is one question, right? I don't think if we break it down by use, it seems to confuse people.
Again, we might understand a little more when we read the stuff that Lindsay's got from MMA, or I don't even know what the bill says on recreational marijuana. I'm not even that familiar with it. So to try to suggest how we should word this,
All
when
right.
I don't really understand what.
So then let's give ourselves a little time.
Yeah, maybe it'll give us another month to kind of go over.
Put
There's
it on
no
next
pressing.
next month's agenda
Sure.
to at least have a rough draft of,
Sure.
of what it should be.
Right.
and I'll email you guys the information, it'll be easier for me, there's
Yeah.
links attached and if
I
you
mean, I've read
decide-
through a lot of it. It's,
Yeah.
it's out there. It's on the interweb.
All right, so we'll you know put that, we'll table that and you know study up a little bit more over the next month and then maybe address it at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Yeah, two things. One real quick and the other, just a suggestion. One is I think we have to have a workshop to address density issues, the ordinance. As we saw in this thing, we don't have clear standards. I would like to see that. However they play out, so that we don't get into, I know it was large to me, so spearheading that, but, I thought it was valid. And so I'd like to see that set up for sometime soon. The other is I'd like to suggest that we no longer tape these meetings and we only have audio tape. Primarily, my reason for that is I don't feel real comfortable with it when people come up to me in the parking lot at calls and know who I am and start berating me for whatever I said at the last meeting.
Right.
One, two, the select board doesn't even tape their meetings. I don't see why we're held to such a higher standard. I think audio tape is good because it gives a permanent record of exactly.
If I could just say, like, I'm fine with that, but you guys discussed this in multiple meetings, and I went through all the work to do this invoice for equipment based off of video and audio recording. But
Change
that's what
it,
the
Lindsay.
town spent the
Undo
money
it.
on.
Undo it. Do it over again.
Don't you have
Spend the
kids?
money.
Don't you have kids?
No.
It's good stuff to
I
have for
mean-
all the public meetings too.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, we can do
I mean, I'm not
audio.
opposed to it. You know, I guess if you want to discuss it, we can discuss it. You know, I've never liked being on camera myself. It was
Right.
one of those things that I
But-
dealt with it because
My issue is the materials, money's been spent,
We're
we got
doing
it,
it.
we got
It's
the
the right
materials,
thing
so.
to do.
Yeah, it's, I agree.
could
The 20th century, 21st
need to do
almost.
it.
what about all these deep fakes now? We're all on video.
When there's a
we make
lawyer
deep fakes,
involved,
so-
I would have the camera.
Yeah, I just think.
I can tell you one of the things, it does keep people in line. Even myself, I found myself making sure that I don't have, you know.
Personal security detail for you.
Yeah, I hear you, but some people in the audience might need that too,
Yeah.
you know.
So what's the result of that?
I don't know, you gonna, make a motion or what?
I don't know, I don't really wanna do it on a vote, I just wanna get a sense.
I wouldn't be opposed to it, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we should.
I feel like we voted to make sure that we were gonna videotape all these things, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Right.
but we did.
Yeah.
I'll certainly look into.
When you were there too.
Andy's gonna resign.
But you were there, I'm just saying. I don't know if you were on record.
No, I
voting
voted,
against
I
it.
voted that we get.
No, I think that's it. All right,
That's different.
make a motion, meeting, to
Second.
adjourn, yeah.
It's one more.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andy,
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry. You have one more thing?
No, I don't, it's just those two.
Okay.
We're gonna set up a workshop to do.
So we wanna have a workshop for, how about this, you know, we'll probably be pretty low, not have much going on in December maybe, you know? We got, next month, we've got a few things going on, you wanna set a workshop up next month to
December.
address
Let's do it
density?
for
The
December.
rate of growth in Maplewood, are you sure?
Yeah. So, you know, if we could maybe make some plans to have a workshop in
Yeah,
December
why
to
don't we do it,
address.
that gives us time to sort of.
I mean, we
So
still
you
have.
already have the ad
Yeah.
rolling, I'll double check, I'm pretty sure you do.
Right.
So it'll be the first Tuesday of December.
Yep,
Okay.
December 3rd.
All right, and then we can discuss it more and see if we want to add anything to it at the next meeting, maybe if
This
we,
is specifically about,
density, Andy said,
okay.
density, addressing density,
Addressing the inconsistencies.
or maybe even discussing it or
But
whatever,
that's, so you wanna put that on,
a workshop,
Workshop.
a workshop.
to discuss density?
Yeah.
Look at the contradictions in the density.
And maybe we can do something with the recreational at the same workshop, if it's not too much, you know, it'd be, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that between the multiple documents here, you know, there is a gray area with some of the verbiage that's used, and so if we can
I think it's, yeah.
correct some of it, I don't know.
All right,
I think it needs to be changed, I don't think it's gray.
Sure.
To be honest with you, I think
It's like
pretty
charcoal.
clear. It
You know,
doesn't
it's pretty.
reflect
It's like charcoal.
what you think,
A lot of
one
this,
might
I mean,
think it should.
a lot of this apparently is drawn from other documents.
Yeah.
Arbitrarily and just
Yeah.
stuck in there,
Without
and then you don't know that
referencing
until you go to try to apply it.
right.
So that's the kind of stuff I
Well,
would.
our entire comprehensive plan is essentially like a draft document that just has the, you know, the right terms and words put in place. Because it had to be done under state law by a certain date, and it reads that way.
All right, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Did we set that, did we set December 3rd?
No,
Wait a second.
usually, we'll have another meeting before then.
This is a rolling. This is a rolling.
Yeah, it's the work, we can discuss it and maybe pile something
It's
on.
always-
Alright, I won't forget.
No, don't, yeah, I won't. It'll be the next meeting, right? We'll discuss it at the next meeting, right? If it's
I
not
seconded it.
All right, all those in favor? All right, meeting is
Sure.
adjourned at 9, I'm sorry,
Are you sure?
8:55.
About what?
I don't need anything else.
No, that's.
All right, so.